Hello everyone. We have a question here of prism. Where we have to where we have given the values of angle of incidence and the corresponding angle of deviation. And in first part we have to find for what angle of incidence, angle of emergence will be equal to angle of incidence. And then second question is we have to draw a ray diagram for each of the following cases. So for before solving the question, we are getting elementary idea of prism. So in prism, this angle is known as angle of prism, and the angle of incidence and the angle between incident light and the normal is known as angle of incidence, and this angle is known as angle of refraction at first surface. And after going through this refraction, this light ray will bend away from the normal, and this angle is known as angle of emergence. This is angle of emergence. So, and this is angle of incidence. So to save our time, I'm not driving this relation. We have a relation for between angle of deviation and angle of incidence and angle of emergence and angle of prism. We have this relation between all these quantities. So if we draw, and let me tell you the angle of deviation. The angle of deviation is the angle between incident light, original path of incident light and the emergent light. So this angle is known as angle of deviation, and we have this relation. So if we plot a graph between angle of deviation and angle of incidence, we will get a graph like that. I'm not plotting this graph, I'm just using it. You can see this graph in your book anywhere else where we have derived this formula, or we have derived the formula of mu, refractive index of prism. In there we have to plot this graph. Now in this graph we can see here for a value of delta, it means for a value of angle of deviation, there are two corresponding value of angle. So the first value corresponds to angle of incidence, and the second value corresponds to the angle of emergence, I2. And if we can see here, when the value of angle of deviation reaches to minimum, then the value of angle of incidence and value of angle of emergence coincides. So for delta equal to delta minimum, the angle of incidence and angle of emergence will become equal. So we can see here in our table, our first question is for what angle of incidence angle of emergence will become angle of incidence. So we have to check from the values of angle of deviation which value is minimum. So we can see here in this table the minimum value of angle of deviation is 40 degree. So for this value 40 degree, angle of incidence is 52 degree, and at this value the angle of incidence will become angle of emergence. That's why our angle at angle 52 degree, the angle of incidence will become angle of emergence. That's why the answer of this question will be 52 degree, because at this angle the angle of deviation is minimum. So before moving to second part of this question, where we have to draw the ray diagram, we are reconsidering this equation delta equal to I1 plus I2 minus A. So if we consider this equation again, then we have seen here for delta equal to delta minimum, when the delta is minimum, then I1 become I1 and I2, then I1 and I2 becomes equal. So we can see here that I1 I2 will become equal to I. So if we use this value here, then the equation of delta will become 2I minus a, because I1 and I2 are same, then it will add up. Then equation will become delta minimum equal to 2I minus a. So from here, if we take a to LHS and delta minimum to here, then a will become 2I minus delta minimum. And what we have the value of delta minimum, and from the table we have minimum value of deviation is 40 degree. So we are writing this 40 degree in the place of delta minimum. So angle of prism will become twice of 52 degree. Why we are using 52 degree? Because in table, at the value of minimum deviation, we have angle of incidence is 52 degree. That's why we are using here 52 degree in the place of I. So from this we will get angle of prism equal to 64 degree. So we have got the angle of prism is equal to 62 degree. Now 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 we will we now the equation, this equation will become delta equal to I1 plus I1 plus I2 minus 64 degree, because we have derived this value. Now we are moving towards part second of the question, where we have to draw the ray diagram. So in ray diagrams, what we basically we have to see the angle of incidence. What are the angle of incidence and what are the values of, if we know the value of angle of incidence and angle of emergence, then we can easily plot the graph. So the task is to know the value of angle of incidence and angle of emergence. So for this we are using this equation which we have derived. We have derived the angle of prism is 64 degree. Now we are using this equation. So for first case we have value of I1. In case 1 we have value of I1 is 33 degree. So I1 equal to 33 degree, and the and delta equal to, and the corresponding delta equal to 60 degree. So putting these putting values, we get delta equal to I1 is 33 degree, or we have to put value of delta also, sorry. Then 60 degree equal to 33 degree plus I2 minus 64. Then we will get the value of 64, and this it will become 30 minus, oh sorry, I1 I2 minus 64 minus 33 equal to 31 minus 31 degree. Then it will become I2 will become angle of emergence will become 60 degree plus 31 degree, and it will be equal to 91 degree. So if it is 91 degree, then I think we got I1 I2, and we can easily draw these diagrams. But the question is, if this angle is equal to 91 degree, then whether the light ray will pass through the prism or not pass through the prism, it is another question. So we can say that in this case the light ray will not pass through this surface, or if I am wrong, then we will correct it later. Okay, now we are considering case second. So for case second, we are taking I1 equal to 38 degree. and the corresponding delta equal to 50 degree. And again putting in this equation, again putting values in this equation, then we got, then we got 50 degree equal to 38 degree plus I2 minus 64 degree. Then we got I 50 degree equal to 64 minus 38, it will become 14 minus 8. 14 minus 8 is 6. Then 5 minus 3 is 2. 26 degree minus 26 degree plus I2. Then it will become I2, it will become 50 degree plus 26 degree. So it will become I2 will become 76 degree. So we have seen that from these values of angle of incidence and angle of emergence, we can easily draw the ray diagram. So how we can draw? We will draw like that. So first angle is 38 degree. If it is the normal, then 38 degree, I think it will be somewhere here. Then it is 38 degree. 38 degree angle of incidence, 38 degree. And after going through this prism, on this face, let us suppose on this face, the light ray will become very near to this surface, because the angle is 76 degree. So 76 degree. And if we want to know what is this angle R1 and the value of R2, then we have to use the Snell's law. Mu1 sin I equal to mu2 sin R1, and from there we have to use the refractive index of glass, and then we will know the value of R1 and R2. But these are not needed, because they want to draw this just the ray diagram. So we can, if we show the angle of incidence and angle of emergence, it will be enough. Okay, thank you. And now you can also draw other ray diagrams for other cases also. Okay, thank you.